Um,
Yeah.
cool.
Recording, I've been told that recording outside Zoom avoids their compression. So if we have
Okay.
if we both have local files, everything will be
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that. And
primed.
then, yeah, I can export it as a WAV file. So it
Okay.
should be fine.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, I usually do MP3. I don't know. I know zero about this stuff.
Wave is lossless and MP3 is lossy. So you want Wave if you can. Then you just when
Oh,
you edit and you export out to MP3 in the end. Yeah.
I mean, you're the fucking pro, so I should probably.
I would switch to Wave if you can. But honestly,
Let's.
for audio and podcasts, I'm kind of sloppy. So
That's not how I would describe you.
yeah, it does. Maybe it doesn't seem that way, but I literally just recorded one with my garden assistant and I like huddled around this mic, like trying to take turns talking because I don't have two mics. So it's not ideal. We'll get a studio soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. You ready?
Yeah.
Unique New York.
Unique New York.
I figured you for an Anchorman guy. Cool. Kevin Espiritu, the Green Giant Garden Master. Thanks for coming on a podcast.
Hey man, happy to do it. Happy that you have a podcast. Actually, I was really excited when I found out that you had one.
Oh, I appreciate that. I've had a lot of people be like, "You're the kind of guy who should have a podcast." I'm like, I don't know how to interpret that, but keep listening.
It could be, depending on who that's coming from, it's for sure a backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
Or if it's coming from someone like outside of the like thinker online world, then it's an actual compliment.
Yeah, I'm probably 50-50 on backhanded compliments.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's okay. That's good for me. I'm actually super excited to do this because we've like internet known each other for a very long time, and I would like consider you a long distance friend. And you've had like such an awesome run that I feel like I appreciate but don't know the details of, and there's a lot for me to dig into here, and I'm just psyched to hear how it all came together.
Yeah, man. I mean, I would say the same for me. We were just talking about how we know each other more than we actually do, or we think we know each other more than we actually do, because we had a phone call like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And from at least on my end, I don't know about you, I'll see your tweets on Twitter. I'll throw something back at you here and there. And I'm like, oh, Eric's my bro. Never met him in person. Had a 50-minute phone call 5 years ago. And that's just how it is.
Yeah, well, it helps. I mean, I see you like literally every week. You're like, and I feel like caught up on your life in this totally kind of like passive, non-active way. And like when it goes both ways, I think it, you end up with this kind of deep relationship that's just like, I don't know, just forms. Twitter's fucking crazy.
Well, you know what it is, man? It's the parasocial relationship in a way, which I see a lot running what I do, which we're going to talk about, is you get a sense that you know someone way more than you do because you see these slices of their life and you go, oh, I do that too. You start to relate to them and you actually start to fill in the gaps of their life in what you think it is. And then you think you really do know them. And I've got weird stories about that from Epic Gardening that has proven that out, that's like a very real phenomenon.
Yeah, because you are like legitimately famous in gardening circles now. I don't know who is on the if there was a gardening channel, like you would be one of the faces of it. You've been in a male model and Timberland campaigns. You're like, is that weird and annoying? Is that like, because I know you well enough to know that you're like more of a business builder than a fame seeker.
It was the consequence, I suppose. Yeah. I mean, I think it's what's nice about it. I was talking with, I think it was Noah Kagan once about why do you do what you do, right? And because he's in the public eye much more than I am, especially in the business world, right? And I think we both came to this idea of like, it's cool when someone recognizes you, but it's cooler that it's because what you put out helped them in a certain way. So it's fame of utility, I suppose, than just like raw, I know this guy, which in my world, actually probably more than someone like him, it sometimes can be that way. Because if they see on YouTube and they have this idea that YouTubers are like really cool people, then they might freak out a little bit. But yeah, it's been interesting. It's been funny. It's been like humbling. It's been a good thing overall, I would say.
Yeah. Well, so it started. Tell us how it started, because this goes way back to like, I mean, you built this blog as a byproduct of marketing, right? You were just trying to like proof of work yourself into like, hey, look, I got internet skills.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we go all the way back to the beginning, I suppose it would be, going to college at UCSB. I came in playing online poker. And I was like, I was obsessed with it back then. This would have been 2005. So this is like right on like wave one of online poker. And so I got really into that, started playing that in college. Came in undeclared, eventually declared business economics accounting, but I was making like well more than an accountant salary during college. And accounting, I was like, this is stupid. It turns out it's not. It's actually extremely valuable. But at the time, I was like, why would I come out of college, work 80 hours a week to make 60K a year on something I'm not absolutely in love with when poker's doing more? Yeah. And so that set me off the path of really I thought in my head, I was like, I'll never get a job. And back then I kind of had like a toxic belief I would think about jobs. I was like, if you're not working for yourself, like you're just a clown,
yeah.
Which held me back a lot. I would say held me back a lot in my growth, my early 20s, just a dumb belief. But yeah, so that kind of set me off. And then after I quit poker, which was about 6 months after graduating, I was like, okay, well, that was kind of just a high paying job. I didn't really, you're not making money when you're not playing it. I did start doing some investing in other players, but not too much. So I started building websites, and then I was like, okay, well, building websites is a one-off contract. You got to keep hustling for clients. So maybe I'll start helping them with their marketing. And that's when the blog came about. It's like, well, I should have a calling card. And instead of a business card, why not just a blog that proves that I know what I'm doing? And I was into gardening at the time. And so I just started a blog back then. It wasn't called Epic Gardening, as basically the online business card when I would go into like a dentist or a plumber and say, like, I can market your business.
Yeah. I don't know what it is about poker that either like attracts or shapes people, but I feel like a lot of the most amazing like entrepreneurs and investors have some kind of like poker or gambling background.
I've thought about that a lot, actually. I was talking to a anonymous, I don't know who this person is, because it's, in the crypto Web3 world, you never know who anyone is anymore. But it turns out this guy I was talking to, we both were in the same era of poker players. We sort of knew the same players and we're in the same worlds. And lo and behold, this guy's like a crypto god, right? And so that you somehow, I think what it is, the way I thought about it when I was playing poker is it really is a microcosm of exactly the skills that you need as an entrepreneur, because you're working off imperfect information, but you can infer a lot. And you have to make decisions quickly, and you have to put stakes behind the decisions that you make in certain sizes, your bet sizing and all that. And so to me, I'm like, it's almost the perfect simulation of decision making under pressure. With like real world information. You don't know everything, right? So that's what I think it is. But yeah, you're right. I mean, a ton of poker players end up doing something in the world of business.
Were you like super quantitative about your approach? Like, are you a math brain guy?
I think I'm some sort of weird hybrid. Like, there's definitely stronger mathematician style players than I was. And there's definitely way stronger field-based players than I was, which is probably why, I did pretty well, all things considered. But I was nowhere near the guys that I was sort of learning from. And these are guys that were buying in with like 40 grand, playing 4 tables at a time and losing or winning 6 figures in a day, and I was making some number of 6 figures in a year. Right. Yeah. So the scale was just way off. I think I had too much emotion tied up to the money still.
Yeah. Well, it's hard, especially when, you're that young, like,
yeah.
Big swings is tough. So you left poker, you started building websites, working on the internet, building this blog. Where did it turn from sort of side project into like, oh shit, this is my full-time thing now?
Yeah, that took a while, actually. So the blog, I registered the domain, I think in 2013, but I didn't go full-time on it till 2016. And in that gap, I had raised some money from like quote unquote angels. Didn't really know much about raising at the time. So they weren't really even angels. And it was just a bad idea to do like this relationship app with a co-founder of mine. I think the idea was good. It just execution was not.
Yeah.
So that had failed. And then I finally decided, oh, maybe working for someone and learning is a smart idea and not like making you a clown. And so I ended up working, I was employed too at what was then called Book in a Box, but is now called Scribe Media. Which if anyone doesn't know what it is, it's kind of like this hybrid publishing service that is not quite traditional, is not quite self-published, and they put out some really high quality stuff. So learned a lot there.
Yeah. I use Scribe to publish the
Almanac. Oh, did you really?
Account. Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I always call them like a professional self-publisher.
That's like, what they are. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know. I call them my publisher, but it's they just help you do all the stuff at a really professional level, but you still have all the rights. There's no like weird financial instrument like the traditional publishers do.
What's so funny is, I mean, to go back to the story, like I learned a lot about how companies grow, because I couldn't get a company of mine past, high 5, low 6 figures of revenue, let alone income, right? And so for me, I was like, that's just not enough for me to consider myself doing well in business, right? Yeah. So I mentored under them, learned a ton. I was like, oh shit, this is actually how you run a company past a certain scale. And then lo and behold, in 2016, when I did Epic Gardening full time, like a couple of years later, I got a book deal, and it was a traditional publishing deal, which is kind of like going backwards, so to speak. But it's just a funny little twist of events.
Yeah, I'm getting approached by traditional publishers now, and I kind of want to like pick your brain about that, because I think you've done it both ways. But let's stick with your story for now.
Yeah.
Let's like do a memento thing where like you tell us where Epic Gardening is now, and then maybe we'll go back to like 2015, 16 when you're kind of going full time on that.
Yeah, sure. So I guess today Epic Gardening would be, really kind of depends on how you slice it up, but I would say that we're the largest gardening education platform in the world. It really depends on if you value like multi-platform, like if you sum up the multi-platform, then for sure we are, because we're the biggest on YouTube. I think we're the biggest on TikTok. We're the biggest on Instagram. So social wise, for sure. Yeah. And then just the breadth of content formats that we publish, we've got to have the biggest surface area. And then what we've done since then is, okay, well, you've got all the education. Instead of working with brands, just become your own brand and start offering products yourself direct to consumer. And so that's what we started to do. I wouldn't say we're anywhere near the biggest at that point on the product side, but that piece has led us to the point where we are now, where we're about to close a Series A and really run for the fences on this direct to consumer, like education based model.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because it's getting harder to find like what a company is or isn't, because I don't know, 4 years ago or something, you would have been like, oh, this is a media company. Yeah. But now like you kind of work backwards into all these different product lines. And now it's like, well, you're kind of a product business, but also like the media is a revenue driver in itself. Like you don't need a marketing arm, because the media products are the marketing for the products. Yeah. Like it's all just this big, beautiful, like.
What's weird, dude, is I feel like a fish out of water in any specific like lane I'm in, because let's say in the direct to consumer world, right? Since we now offer products. Yeah. Well, everyone's talking about like CAC and LTV and return on ad spend. And I'm like, I literally don't have a line item for ads, because my ads, if you think about it, are the content that I produce, which is actually revenue positive. So my customer acquisition cost is actually a positive number, which you can't even start a conversation with a D2C person, because they're like, that doesn't make sense. Yeah. And then if you go into like the influencer world, right? Well, they're all playing with, okay, what's my RPM on YouTube and how many views can I get to scale linearly my RPM? And I'm like, okay, well, actually I don't really care if my RPM pays me that much, because the actual earnings on the back end for the products is way better, right? And so either way, either world I'm in, it's like I'm doing the opposite of what you're supposed to do, So it's kind of weird to like try to talk to people in any of those fields.
Yeah, you like vertically integrated slowly, like slice by slice,
very slow. Yeah,
from media back through. It probably doesn't feel slow looking back now, but
I would say the thesis that I like came up with is I was like, okay, well, what's the hardest thing? It's harder to get attention and build trust with an audience over time than I think anything else online. And so if I get that first, then that can go to anything else, rather than coming up with a product and like buying influencers to try to sell it, So that was the idea. And it turns out seems like it was right.
Yeah. And you don't have to share revenue numbers or anything unless you're comfortable with it. But like audience size, like you said, biggest in the gardening world, but it's fucking huge. Like YouTube is 1.5 million, at least a couple 100,000 on Instagram. Last I looked.
Yeah. I would say we're approaching 8 figures of revenue. And that's with 0 ads and almost no products, because we can't even get inventory. Right. Yeah. And then, so 1.5 on YouTube, 1.1 million on TikTok, almost 500,000 on Instagram. The podcast, before I stopped, I was doing a daily podcast for 4 years. I took a month break just because of some personal stuff, but I think every episode gets about 10,000 downloads or so. Wow. And yeah, I mean, it's just wild. Obviously there's the whole thing of COVID that really ramped us.
Yeah.
But even without that, I think it still would have been a pretty sizable business.
For sure. Yeah. So what does the team look like that has to run this thing? Do you have like contractors for different kind of types of media, or you just like have 19 arms and never sleep?
Well, so what I've scaled the company revenue and like metrics faster than the team, which is a mistake. So actually, I think that's a pretty sizable mistake I've made, where really it's myself, an assistant, an in-person garden manager, warehouse manager, and some contractors for editing and graphics and stuff. And that's it. And so to me, I feel like when you get to like approaching 8 figures of revenue and your team's that small, you've left growth on the table. It's kind of a cool flex, but I don't think it's not actually that cool. You probably should just have hired more people. So that's kind of the phase we're going into now. Like we're going to go customer service, director of commerce, like we're going the full thing. Cause yeah, I mean, dude, it's tough to do a million things at once, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm amazed that like that's a lot of revenue and a lot of content like across all those channels, like to be good at all those, and you're good at all of them, right? It's not, I feel like a lot of creators have these, one channel that they're really strong in, and there's kind of like spillover half-assery that happens in other channels.
Yeah. I would say so I'm always in search. I think the one I'm the worst at is Twitter. I get jealous of guys like you, because I'm like, oh, he's so good at putting things into like a tweet format that people enjoy. And I'm just not. Certainly in gardening, it's like, that's not a big platform in gardening. But one thing I really tweeted out that I thought I was, like, this does encapsulate how I think about content, is I said, content is a language and platforms are the dialects of the language. And so if you know how content should be structured, it's just a shifting game to make it work per platform, right? So even like an Instagram reel versus a TikTok, it's kind of the same short form video vertical format, but it's kind of not, because the platform has like a meta language that it uses, right? And you kind of have to know both. And so in a perfect world, you'd make the same content twice, and you might even say like 3 different words. And so that's how I've sort of thought about that.
Yeah. Okay. So on the come up again, did you start with like one particular platform, get good at that, then add another platform?
Totally. Yeah. So like, cause I never thought I'd be like raising money, right? I was like, oh, I'll just ride Epic Gardening until the sunset, and it's a cash flow business, and that's fantastic. And I can do whatever I want. So the way I did it is that the blog started it out, because I had an SEO background. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll make the blog pay for itself, and then I'll hire up some gardening writers and I'll move to YouTube. So that's what I did. Then I'll do the podcast. Then I'll start getting into social. And the goal was for each of the platforms to be their own revenue drivers, so they could, in theory, run themselves forever. And then also passively be compounding themselves, so that eventually it way outpaces. Right. So that's what I did. I just kind of stair-stepped, and I tried to pick the highest leverage next platform for the prior one. Because like, let's say if you build the blog, then when I went to YouTube, I said, okay, well, what are my top 25 pages? I'll make a video on every single one of those and embed them. Then you don't necessarily have to grow on YouTube. You just have embedded traffic that sends good signals to the algorithm. You're good. Same idea with the podcast, same idea with Instagram and I know you're all about leverage, right? So it's like, just pick the highest leverage thing and just do that. And you don't have to like grind it out to start it,
Yeah, that's super smart. So just like running each new platform, at least getting to break even as quickly as possible. Yeah, really, really interesting. And then sort of using whatever the best raw material was for the next channel. Yeah.
I did the same thing with the podcast, like top 50 posts on the blog, just made podcasts on those and embedded them. And then on like the fledgling social channels at the time, just said I had a podcast, and you got your first 200 listeners. And then if it's good, you just let word of mouth go with the rest.
Yeah. What, how quickly did you find yourself adding new platforms?
I would say, so technically the YouTube and the blog kind of happened at the same time, just as far as effort, So 2016 to 2017, big blog focus. Writers came in around then, and so I could focus on YouTube. So then it was probably YouTube. But I guess I did do the podcast in 2017 too. So kind of not as
6 months or something, maybe.
Yes, like, something like that. And then, now like for example, in the pandemic, when YouTube really ramped, I said, and I just purchased a home, I was like, well, this is the time to launch a secondary channel. Because once you get to a certain level, you're almost forced to talk in generalities. And so then you have to re-niche yourself back down. And what a lot of creators do is they make a second channel that's more free form. And so then I did that. And it's a game of, I think Gary Vee actually says it pretty well. Say what you want about Gary Vee, but he's like, attention is a currency that floats around the internet, and you have to actually know where to like cast the net to get it at the right time. So yeah, you got to play around with that.
Is that second channel also because you start to see caps on your organic reach? Like that's something I hear.
Yeah, I would say, well, gardening is interesting because it is truly evergreen. So if I make the best video I can on growing ginger, growing tomatoes, like there's videos I've made that are 2-3 years old now that still dominate my views at certain times of year, no matter what else I put out. And so like, you know, I have a video on like pruning tomatoes that every month gets a couple 100,000 views. Just, it's never going out of style. Right. So in a sense, I would say no, because I think the overall market on YouTube's growing and gardening's growing, you know, but yeah, I think I just wanted to talk about adjacent stuff to gardening that I couldn't put out on the main channel. Like I can't drop like a solar energy video on the main channel. It just won't work.
Yeah. Because you bought that piece of property and you're homesteading now.
Yeah. I'm trying to like practically homestead in a way that's like accessible to suburban people instead of just going out into the woods, you know?
Yeah. I did bookmark your basil pruning video because look at this little buddy. He's
that's not great.
So sad.
It's, you know what, wait, hold it back up. I think you've got, so if you cut, you see that where that 3 leaf is coming out right there? If you cut right above that, you should be fine.
Okay.
Cut all the dead stuff to right above a growth node and it should come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got it.
Little pro tip.
Trying to make some caprese around here. And
there you go,
my basil's all wilted as shit. Okay. All right. So you've got you got a media company, you got a blog, you got YouTube, you got a podcast. They're growing. They're at least kind of breaking even. It's 2017, 18.
Yeah.
Where do we go from there? Like when did you start introducing the first, actually, before we get there, what was it like to take your hands off of the content production for the first time? You said you brought in writers and that must have been, I mean, that's a big sort of leap in leverage. It's plenty scary for people.
I think so. I don't think I had as hard a time with it as many writers do. Cause what's interesting, at least for me, is I've never thought of myself as like a writer or a YouTuber or I don't think of myself as any of those things in my head. Yeah. And so it makes it a little easier to let go of certain parts of the process, I think. I just think of myself as a content creator. And so whatever line in the stack I am in, that's fine with me. Yeah. And so, hiring a writer, I think, was good because gardening is just so wide. I can't know everything. There's just no way. Yeah. So if I can hire horticulturists that know a lot more than me or have a research background, they're putting out an actually better article than I could put out, especially given my time now, you know? So that wasn't too bad. Even hiring an editor for YouTube, a lot of YouTubers are very protective of that. And I was like, look, I'll literally never be better than a full-time editor at editing. Yeah. It's just not possible. And so, you know, hiring an editor, huge leverage leap that lets you put out not only better content, but more, right? And so, it hasn't been that difficult. I just think the mistake I've made, like I was saying, is I should have done this way faster. The ramp could have been way faster. But I'm not upset about how I did it.
Yeah, I feel like everybody who's got the survivor bias, like now that it worked, we should have done it faster. Like
exactly right, because you're taking the first time you do it, you take a risk, and then the second time you're like, oh, obviously it wasn't as much of a risk as I thought. I should have done it more. Yeah.
Is there anything specific you think you should have done sooner?
Yeah, so I would say hiring the editor, but like right as the YouTube channel started, there's no real need for me to even ever edit, I don't think. There was a need for me to write. I think I've still got about 30% of the articles on the blog are mine. So hiring a writer would have been, that was probably fine. I could have hired more writers quicker, because now what we have is we have an editor-in-chief that manages, right? And so that would have been a smarter move, because with SEO, with written content, the sooner you get it up, the sooner it's aging for the algorithm, because you're looking at like 6 to 12 months before a decent ranking. So it's like, really just get things up, season them. So that would have been better. I think when you play these compounding games on the internet with these, call them Web2 platforms, I guess, the sooner you get them up, the better, because you need to compound the leverage of it way quicker. So like if I could have put 20 videos out a week in spring of 2017, those videos would be, I mean, the channel could literally be double the size.
Interesting.
So, because think about it, anything I put out before COVID would have gotten that same boost. which would have compounded everything way more. It's just a mistake. I think the compounding mistakes are very strong in online.
Man, you're going to give me a speed complex, and I already have one. So
yeah, man. I mean, I have it too. It's weird because like I have that, but also life's good. And there's not like, you don't have to do that. It's just that the thing that gets me is like, you could. And so if you could, my brain goes, then I should, but also life's good. So there's this interplay of like, do I really need to grow the biggest thing of all time, or do I actually not, you know?
Yeah, it's probably nice that you're like, I don't know. I imagine your life, this is the parasocial thing. I imagine your life as being like a little hectic around the business side, because like this is a big organization to run as just one dude. But also like you spend a lot of time blissed out, just like pruning stuff with your hands in the dirt, like just being a happy farmer.
I would say, yeah, that was more the case maybe last year. This year has been a little bit less, because like with the products, which I think we'll talk about, it's you know, getting a warehouse and learning how to do all that has taken a lot of time. And so it's weird because like the whole reason I started gardening was to get off the computer. I was like really addicted to video games, you know? And now I'm playing a great video game with it really, I do feel like it's this sort of great game that I'm playing, which sometimes means you're not in the garden, which is kind of counterintuitive, but yeah, it is nice to be able to just walk out and chill and do that. Yeah.
Okay. So 2017, 18, you got a kind of a media company. What's like the scale or the event that made you feel like, okay, like time to go to the next step?
Yeah. So I would say like, I mean, we can talk revenue of those years, like 2016, when I quit Scribe, I think I made like 18 grand from Epic Gardening. And this is a guy, I'm 29 at that point in time. It's not like, I'm not thriving. I had savings. I'm not thriving. And then, so then the next year, I think we did 72. That would have been 2017. Then 2018, we did 225. And
just
then
all media revenue, like,
so when you talk about like the influencer model, which is, I guess, what I was at that time, although with a more robust platform set, you're really only looking at 3 streams that are non-owned, which would be ad revenue on YouTube and the blog, affiliate revenue on whatever platform you can drive that through, typically Amazon, and then brand work. And so those are the 3 stacks, unless you have some sort of course, right? Which I've never had. So yeah, that's all that was back then. And then 2019 is when I added actual physical products to the mix. In 2019, we doubled yet again to like 520K in revenue. And so that as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, the first year I tried this, dipping my toes in the pond, we doubled revenue. And it's a completely new thing. We haven't even scratched the surface. I was like, yeah, products is the obvious play here, you know? And that's what I've poured a lot of the energy into.
What was the first product you did?
Yeah. So here's the crazy part about this model to me is it's a demand. Because you have, if you're an influencer or a creator, like yourself, right? Or any of these, like Jack Butcher, Visualize Value, like these types of guys, if you have a platform or platforms in my case, and you're putting content out, you're getting feedback back from people on what they like or don't like about the content or the products within the content or things they would want to see. And so if you think about it, I'm getting a lot of products from gardening companies all over the place. I can display them or not if I like them. If I like them, I can talk about them. And then if I get some sort of way outsized response, it's like, okay, well then let me talk to that brand about doing something bigger. It's very obvious. You don't have to like be a genius and like, oh, here's how I came up with this product. You don't have to do any of that. And so I had there were these metal raised beds out of Australia that I had in my front yard, and everyone's like, what are those in every post? And so every quarter of 2018 to 2019, I emailed these guys and I was like, hey, everyone, like, do you have someone here that sells them? And they're like, oh, we do. And I was like, okay, well, if you ever want another, like I'll be that person. And I just did it like every quarter. I had an email just sent out to them. And 2019, at the beginning of the year, they're like, actually, our distributor dropped off. Would you like to do it? And so I was like, okay, sure. How does this even work? I don't even know how to buy products. And so I ended up buying a 20-foot shipping container for like 35 grand, which was for sure the most money I'd spent at any one point in time. I didn't even have a car that much, you know? And so I was like, okay, I'm really going to buy like 35 grand of a product and put it on a boat and ship it here. And dude, it's so funny looking back because I was going to rent a self-storage place in San Diego landed in LA, cart it to San Diego, and put it in the self-storage place and like fulfill it out of that, because I didn't know how you did that. And so I had this self-storage place like all lined up, and then I talked to a couple of friends, and they were like, dude, what are you doing? Like, get a 3PL or get someone to fulfill it for you. Like, you're insane. And so that's what I did. But yeah, on the water, as it was coming over, I put them up for pre-order, sold them out. And so then I was like, hey, give me another 20-foot container, put that on the water, sold that out. So before either came here, they were gone. And wow. So then I had the revenue, I had the capital to reinvest in inventory, and I didn't have to advertise to do it. So that I didn't have a margin hit like most D2C companies have, where it's like you sell out your inventory and then you have to buy inventory and buy ads. So you literally have nothing left, but I actually had money left so I could hire up and stuff. And so that's kind of how that whole thing started. And that's still the flagship line of products that we have today.
Wow. Yeah. What's the, but you've expanded, you added a bunch of new products, I'm sure.
Yeah. Added and adding. Yeah. More stuff. Yeah. I mean, the opportunity I see is like, okay, if you have best in class content, when people really get a connection to you, because I mean, with gardening, it's interesting because people will send you emails like, you know, you changed my whole family's life, or like I was going to kill myself in COVID and I found your channel, you know, and wow. You get, there's a level, because it's a primal activity, right? Like there's a level of connection you get. And so if you pair that level of power with actually delivering them really, really high quality products that are actually good and not just like, hey, I slapped my name on it and you're buying it because you like me, it's a really powerful combo. Because I mean, how do you beat that? I don't know how to beat that as a commerce player.
And something that somebody like people are already so passionate about. I think it's interesting you said like a primal activity, like it is timeless. It's something that I don't know. My mom was always really into gardening, and she always talks about like that there's she's also a nurse. So she's like got medical terms for this that I won't know, but she's like, there are like enzymes that happen to your hands that connect to things in your brain that like when your hands are in the dirt, you are happy neurochemically in a way that you can't be in any other situation. Like that's super, super interesting.
I saw something about that where it was like, there's some sort of bacteria that's present in most soil environments where if you interact with it, it does have some impact on your happiness or something like that. The level of that we don't know about all these like connections of the natural world is blue, you know?
Yeah, it is so wild. I mean, also just like high oxygen environment and sun and fresh food and all this stuff. So are you like, do you consider yourself more of a gardening nerd or more of a business nerd at this point?
I would say in the beginning, I was more of a gardening nerd. And now that I'm entering new waters in business, I have to be more of a business nerd, but I'm actually really looking forward to hiring people who are better than me at stuff I know I'll never want to do full time. And going back to being a gardening nerd, because I actually think there's so much like lore that hasn't been tied to like new soil science and soil biology and all that. I actually think we can come up with legit discoveries in gardening that haven't been seen yet. So I kind of want to go back to that and do that. But right now it has to be business. Hell
yeah. Dude, let's build this solar punk future.
Dude, I'm just really into that. I'm really into that. I saw some guy, Yashan, the ex-CEO of Reddit. He's like really into solar punk. He's doing this tree carbon capture thing. And he had this like solar punk contest and I wanted to submit, but I was like, dude, the solar punk future is where I need to be. It's where I need to spend my time.
It's sick. Yeah. I'm building a thread. I kind of like all these little weird ideas put together. It does feel like there's a little bit of a movement around it. It's super cool.
Then there's I saw someone going anti-solar punk and it was like, this is a stupid future. Actually, the future is going to be like nuclear and like super high. I don't know. Everyone's got their own perspective. I like solar punk better.
Yeah. I don't think that I don't know. There's plenty of room for nuclear in solar punk. I think it's just like,
I would think so. Yeah.
I don't know. It's better than steam. We're not going forward to steam. That's just not going to, we're not going to build everything out of brass and have monocles again.
But honestly, it would be cool. I honestly like the steampunk aesthetic. If the physics made sense, I would kind of be down.
It just looks so uncomfortable. It looks just like hot and cramped. I don't know.
Whenever I see those like steampunky movies or like video games, I'm like, man, I really could live in that world for like a couple of weeks at least. It just seems fun. Yeah, a little taste, a little taste.
Am I right in finding Scuttlebutt that you did the Reforge growth course like way back in the day?
I actually did do that. Yeah, that was with Scribe. So
Okay.
I got sent to do that with Scribe, and I think I went to one or two of the in-person things. I think it was maybe like their second cohort or third cohort. I felt very out of place for sure when I was there. I'll say that much.
Yeah, it's probably a lot of product managers and not a lot of people building media companies.
Yeah. Well, back then, like I was learning how to even be an employee or be good at being in a company. And then I'm sitting there in Silicon Valley or SF with all these guys who have fucking tons of stock up, whatever, you know. It's weird because like it's a world that I put high status on that in practicality, I actually don't want to inhabit. But still, I think those people are really cool and I like want to be like them in my like weaker moments. I don't know. It's a weird thing I have.
Yeah, I relate to that. And then I watch Silicon Valley and I'm like, oh, this works. This perfect parody.
Yeah, totally.
So did any of that, I mean, does any of that growth stuff like stick with you? Are you like hyper methodical about how you approach that stuff in Epic Gardening?
I would say what's weird is like as the platforms have scaled, less analytical about the individual sort of platform metrics. I try to hone in, let's say on YouTube, all I really care about is CTR and quality watch time. Everything else I don't really care about. You know, on Instagram, I would care about, let's say, well, really the only thing that matters on Instagram now is Instagram Reels. So if I'm not posting that, then I'm failing. But within that, it would just be sends. You really just want that to be sent to other people, and that's about it. So yeah, I guess I would say no, because what I've tried to do is build like, I really think of it as like a digital organism. And so like the platforms are organs of a body that is sort of meta. And so if you keep the health of the individual organs up, they all communicate with one another in some way. And in that sense, you kind of let chaos grow it rather than like structured metrics, I guess. And I don't know if that's dumb or not, because that's how I've always thought about it. I was like, well, if you treat each platform correctly with the algorithm and the people on the platform, and you just make it available, they could go anywhere else. They'll just do it if they want to. And you don't have to like try too hard to make it happen. But maybe I'm just leaving a lot of growth on the table. I don't know if that's true or not.
I don't know either, but I don't know that many people who successfully run this many platforms either. Like, did you see increase in each internal platform as you added a new one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
that makes sense.
As long as you give them the on and off ramp to each of them.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to, like on YouTube, for example, something we do is we'll have these little lower thirds just passively pop up that say like daily gardening tips on Instagram. Check it out. We have a podcast. I'm not like really calling it out, but if they just happen to be looking over 4 million views a month, then so some people will go. And you just let them choose. And every so often I kind of directly call it out.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. There's like I don't know. I find relief in finding, like, I have to be very intentional about time on YouTube. Like, I don't love just like sitting in front of my computer. It's not like part of my consumption habit.
Dude, I wish I was like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love YouTube way too much.
Oh, really?
I'm obsessed with YouTube, dude. I watch it all the time.
I mean, as you should be probably.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, oh man, 20-minute YouTube video. Like that feels like the opportunity cost of 20 minutes of desk time. Do you watch it on TV? Or like on your phone, or like
I treat YouTube a lot of the times like a podcast because I have YouTube Premium, and so you can actually close your phone.
Okay.
And so I'll throw on like, you know, my headphones and I'll be outside working or going for a walk or something, and I'll just listen to a YouTube video as if it's a podcast. Weirdly, I've like moved away from podcast consumption in favor of YouTube, but I think my consumption habits are kind of weird. Like they're not typical for sure.
I think everybody's got their own weird habit, you know, around that stuff, which is kind of why I figured it. I mean, it makes sense when you have all those platforms, you let people choose their own adventure on a platform level, but stay within your brand. Like that makes a ton of sense.
All I want is for them, if there's a format of content they prefer, I just want to have it for them. And that's why, for example, the podcast existed, or like doing the short form videos and the long form YouTube videos. You know, I just want to have it there available. It's kind of like, I think at Scribe, I learned, a lot of people don't read books anymore, but the people who do really, you have to have a book. Because like writing the 2 gardening books I wrote, way less people have ever read those. And we sold like 40,000 copies, but way less people have ever read those and watched one video, you know? But you still have to write it, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's such a weird arbitrage around books. Like there's plenty, I've written way more words and published way more words on the internet than inside of a book, but because it's got an ISBN, people like, and it's like this mysterious thing that's a specific, like intimidating body of work to think about creating. I think people like give it this status.
They still do, which is crazy because like back when we started, I'm not gonna say we started, when I joined, Book in a Box Scribe, that was already starting to erode because of the self-publishing on-ramp was so easy. And so there was this gap that Tucker and Zach found that was like, oh, self-publishing is kind of garbage. Like a lot of garbage comes out, but traditional publishing is an elitist gated system. And so let's actually make a published book that's good, that you actually own the upside of. And you would think that if you can self-publish, traditional publish, and do this sort of hybrid model, that the allure of being an author would start to go away in the world of the public. They would start treating it less seriously, but that still hasn't happened. If you have a book, you're still a baller for no good reason. Hopefully it's a good reason, but you get what I'm saying? You could be seen as cooler than you are with no, just because you have the ISBN.
I think that's true, but I will also say it is a shitload of work. It is a lot more work to put together a good book than an equivalent amount of good blog posts, just because like the cohesion and the packaging and like the organization of all of it is heinous.
I would say it's like, what do you think? I mean, you wrote an incredible book. My books are different because it's more a how-to manual, but I would say it's like 10 to 15 times as much work to do a book than it is to do like the same amount of words as blog posts.
Yeah. I think that's about right. Which makes it maybe not an arbitrage at all, but
it's what I consider it. It's not a financial arbitrage directly, because especially me, like being a traditional publisher, you're getting an 8 to 10% royalty. The only way I make that work is by buying wholesale for myself and selling it on my own store. Then I actually capture $12 a copy instead of $2, right? Yeah. And then the next level, which Tucker came up with when he was writing his original books, is you sign a distribution deal with a traditional publishing company, but you actually publish the book. And so then you get the upside. So he formed like a publishing company himself and signed, I think, with Simon & Schuster to just distribute. Because really, that's the only thing traditional publishers are good for still, is they can get your book in every Barnes & Noble in the country, and you still can't. A couple bucks a copy to like $8 when he wrote a second book, which crushed,
Yeah. I think that's actually similar to what George Lucas did with Star Wars. I think like once he got the first one was successful, he's like, distribution only, I don't need your financing. But he doubled down on himself over and over again, put like his whole net worth into production of the next movie.
Didn't he take a piece of like and like, isn't there something with Star Wars where like he retained the merch rights or something like that, which blew up?
Yeah, it was
something like that, right?
Yeah. The merch rights were like undervalued by the studios at that point, because there like wasn't really big merch stuff, and they didn't know that it was gonna be nearly as big as it was. And so I think it was like, it was a little bit genius, but also a little bit like, they don't value this and there's infinite upside to it, so like I'll ask for that and they'll give it to me. And I gotta write a post about that, actually. Like his biography was really interesting. And there's a bunch of little stuff in there that you're like, oh, wow, I did not. He and the other thing I thought was interesting that's like relevant to our world is he and, not James Cameron, the other famous director that was like his contemporary, Indiana Jones.
Oh
my God, whatever.
Wait, isn't that him still?
No, people are going to be
it's not.
Screaming this
Spielberg.
Thank you, Steven Spielberg.
We're such movie buffs.
someone had a heart attack somewhere listening. They like swap points on each other's movies, and so
that's smart.
It'd be like getting like, hey, you've got equity in this startup, I got equity in this startup. Let's give each other 10% of each other's and like share this little pool.
I like that,
which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Wow. What if you could there should be some sort of platform where you could just swap equity with your friends. Huh.
I mean, we're getting, now that like you can get into other companies for, 1,000 or 5,000 or whatever on AngelList, like that's starting to become, you can do it in cash a little bit, but like once we get into token world, I think like a lot
that's
more
game over.
Happen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. I have my mind. It's so weird because like as Epic's growing, and obviously we're going through like this huge raise and this next launch of the company. That's a huge and primary focus. But as soon as I read and get inoculated with the Web3 ideology, I'm like, oh, it's actually the end of Web2 at some future point. Probably not.
Yeah.
To me, it feels like we're like at the phase of Web3 where Twitter just came out, you know, and we're still like posting our old Facebook statuses on Twitter and like, I'm eating a bagel today. That's where it feels like we are. But I could be wrong. Maybe we're further along than we are.
Oh, I think we're even earlier than that, to be honest. Yeah. I think there's only I think there's less than 10 million ETH wallets still on.
That's it.
Which is like, it was like around, it's on the order of 0.1% of the internet has an address.
Okay.
Well, that's good to know. Web3, quote unquote. Yeah. So yeah, I think we're like 97, which is not good for reasons.
That's not good for. Yeah, we might all be crying in a couple of years, maybe in a couple months. Honestly, we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk to me about this raise. Because I mean, you have a, by all accounts, wildly successful business with no cost centers, and just everything that you do produces revenue. So what are you raising money for?
Well, yeah, what's the point, right? So that is the discussion, because if you have a successful business, you're getting emails all the time for like acquisitions, and it's usually from, quite frankly, kind of like clownish companies that are just trying to take advantage of you, And so, given that I never thought I would raise for all the reasons you just said, I would just usually insta delete those, right? And I got an email. Obviously, right now I can't say exactly, but got an email, and it just hit a little different. I was like, okay, well, I'll take the phone call. And it's a very different style of deal than I think a lot of the people in our world would do, because it's not venture, it's private equity. But what it allows me to do in this moment of life, going hard for 5 years on it, and finally admitting, I think, to myself that, hey, I actually don't long term, in the future, for the next couple of years I do, but long term, I don't want to be the CEO of like 150 plus person company, which is where this can easily go. Day to day, it's not as like the status of it I don't really want, and the day to day is just not as interesting as other things I could do. And so, given that there's a ton of opportunity in the gardening space to do a content to commerce style business, because gardening is just such an antiquated industry, so the field is wide open, and to do the execution that I think makes sense in that field, I don't have the capital to do it, even though things are going well, and I don't have the team to do it. And so this particular investor, not only, of course, they have the capital, but they've built companies they've helped build companies in very adjacent spaces with almost the exact sort of philosophy that I was already executing on.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, this just makes complete sense. And of course, yeah, it helps that you get to take some liquidity off the table, and you get to take a little bit of the pressure off, of doing it all on your own. So like hiring up, so that's the idea. It's like, I think, because I'm trying to optimize now for interest and uniqueness of life experience, this allows me way more of that, without as much of the like day to day, like I'm running the whole thing and the world's on my shoulders type of thing.
So are you going to be able to step back a little bit after this? Is this like the like life-changing liquidity moment where you change your day to day, or no?
Well, so I would say it is life-changing liquidity. What I will do with that, I maybe spend $4,000 a month on my personal expenses. Like I don't really have, I've been racking up. I was like, well, what could I do with the money that involved consuming? And I can barely think of anything. And so all I really want to do is like reinvest that into the future of the internet and future of companies and stuff. So I think I'll probably just be working the same amount, but I'll be doing way less of the things that I shouldn't be optimized to do. Right.
Yeah.
I really shouldn't be managing like our inventory anymore. Right. It's a low leverage activity for me personally. Like I should it's in line with what you talk about, right? Like I should look at my 20 to 100x leverage things and just continually get myself out of anything that's not that high. And it's either that, or it's kind of like a barbell strategy, like Taleb. It's like do the hyper leverage stuff, or just chill and like do enjoyable things, and don't do the middle, at least for me. So that's the goal. I'll still be CEO. I'll still be running the whole thing for the foreseeable future. I can see a future in which like we hire a hyper competent COO, and I get to step really far back from some of that, which should be kind of a relief, at least right now. Yeah. So that's the logic.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've got a buddy you should who you should talk to, who's also like content to commerce king. He's like built this incredible company in Missouri, in just outside Kansas City here.
Interesting.
Missouri Star Quilt Company. And it's like,
oh, interesting.
dude,
Okay.
it's
I've
similar.
let's just say I've heard of them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, my buddy Al, similar like kind of story. Like his mom bought this long arm quilter in like 2012, and he was like, "Mom, we should make some YouTube videos, like teach some people how to do it." And then the sort of content like grew an audience, and the audience requested products, and they started selling fabric and growing. I mean, it's a healthy 9-figure business. They employ like half of the town of Hamilton, Missouri. They bought half of the town of Hamilton, Missouri, and opened up 12 quilt stores. It's like the quilting capital of the America. Like it's insane.
I've checked their content out. Because I try to learn from people who aren't in my field as far as like content and stuff. And so, I've heard of them before. It's a really impressive company. It just shows you can build like something insane in a hobby niche, which is just like gardening, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's really funny. People are like, "Oh, like, can you do that full time?" He's like, "Yeah." Like hundreds of people work for this company. Like we're good.
Yeah, like I can do that and then some. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it is very cool. Yeah, and they've gone on to expand into other things. So they've started to do the same thing with like watercolor painting, and doing like, direct to consumer kits through that and content around that. It's amazing.
Yeah. Dude, the education, if you're in a hobby niche, educating really is the only advertising you ever need to do. Educate and entertain. That's it. And then just offer good products. It's really that easy. It's just hard to start. That's the problem with it. It's hard to start.
Yeah. I mean, it took you, I don't know, at least 18 months, it sounds like, before you kind of were like head above water and starting to see returns. And like, it's just, it's a patience game.
Yeah, it's a patience game that compounds. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it, right? Like with all the different projects that you've done over the years, those returns are probably just compounding like crazy now.
They are. I'm too ADD. I like change my trajectory too much. Like sometimes I'm like, well, shit, what if I had been doing evergreen solid for like the last 8 years instead of like changing up projects? I'm like,
you could have been the Farnham Street.
Yeah, it would be the size of Farnham Street or Stratechery or something like that, honestly.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm a dumbass. And then I'm like, no, but I'm happy. I don't know. I indulge my ADD.
Tell me if you think this is true. So it feels like, I don't know that I buy the like, every dollar after 70,000 US doesn't improve your happiness in a material way. I don't think I really buy that. However, there is a limit that everyone hits at some point where you're like, yeah, it doesn't really matter if I'm doing the revenue optimized thing with my life anymore. And it actually doesn't even matter if I pursued this, it would be the biggest opportunity. Some people still are like that. Like the Zucks of the world, are probably always thinking that way. But I think most of us get to a point where like, yeah, just optimize for interesting and impact now.
Yeah. Well, you start to I think you start to shift that perspective and be like, well, I had to optimize for something. I don't know, at least that's the way my brain works. Like, what are the guideposts of this decision? Like, how will I determine success? And there's definitely like people who, I don't know, I always think of it like Buffett versus Munger is like my, I don't know, touchstone for this is like Warren Buffett spent his entire life and like 2.5 careers optimizing for one thing, which is like the size of it, either his net worth or Berkshire's market cap. And Munger is like, oh, I'm going to go study architecture for a while. And like, now I'm going to go do this. Now, I'm a billionaire, but also like I fuck around with all this different stuff because it's interesting.
I think it's my value system. Sounds like it's yours too. I respect those types of people a lot more because I think we're all playing games, right? And depends on, you might be playing a status game in academia or something like that, or you might be playing a money game, whatever. But at some point you do have to recognize that you've beaten the game to any degree that matters. And then you have to say, okay, well, do I just keep playing it because it's fun? And that's probably where you see like a Bezos type of personality. Or do I just switch games and play a different game now? I want to be a father. I want to be a, healthier person or philosophy, whatever it is. I like those people more, like the Feynmans of the world versus the like one thing all the time.
Yeah, me too. Well, the other thing I think about, like, just to empathize with the Zucks and Bezos and stuff, like they also very early on got themselves into a situation, probably deliberately, but like where they were expected and obligated to continue to win that particular game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard. It's like everything in life is a trade-off. And I think there's like two basic personalities where some people can live a life, die at 85 and be like, I was Kobe and I just was the best basketball player I could possibly be. And that's a completely fine way to live. And then like someone like myself, I just want to taste, especially through the vehicle of Epic, I've been able to like do TV, do product, do like inventing stuff,
do male modeling,
do books. Yeah, exactly. That was a crazy experience, dude. That was like, I don't think I'm going to get some deal like that ever again. Cause I could have easily just deleted that email, but it said Timberland. So I took it up. Dude, that was crazy. I'd never done anything like that before in my life. All of a sudden I'm on a plane to Berlin on like $1 million production. Like, and they think I know how to model. Like, I don't know how to model. And so I'm getting this photographer shooting me, and she had like just flown in from shooting Miley Cyrus or something. And she's like this little French girl, literally like splayed out on the ground of this public park in Berlin. And she's like not giving me any instruction at all. And there's like 40 people looking at me. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck do I do right now? Like I got so tight, and some guy comes over, because you have a guy that's going to touch your hair up. You have a makeup woman or man, you have a stylist. You couldn't even touch your shoes. You had to tie it. They had tied it for you. And so some guy comes over to me, like, I don't even know who they were at the time. And they're like, hey, like, just so you know, like, you can like do whatever you want. Like you can walk and like you can pose and whatever. And I was like, dude, thanks for telling me, because I don't know how to model at all. And so I thought you're going to tell me what to do. And they're like, no, like what models do is they kind of like do what they want. And I was like, dude, this is so awkward. But it ended up being, I finally got like comfortable with it, but dude, it was the weirdest thing ever. My mom still has the like Timberland, there's like these huge printouts they did. And so when you go into my childhood home garage, you open the garage and it's like a 20 by 20 foot of me, just like this. It's so stupid.
I think there was one of those up on my like commute to San Francisco. There was like a 20-foot tall Kevin that I would like walk by every morning and be like, "What's up?" I
did get some like texts from like old friends or something like, "Yo, is this you?" And my like on my TV screen. The pivotal moment for me as like a creator is obviously I'm running ads on the blog, right? And so when my own ad of my own self for Timberland showed up on my own blog, I was like, this is the infinite monetization loop. I was like, this is the dream. But yeah, no, that was a weird experience for sure. But yeah, you get to taste it all. And I guess that's what I'm saying is like, I like to touch a bunch of different things.
Yeah. So what's there's another component of this raise too, right? Which is, can you talk about the acquisition? We'll just bleep that out if not.
Yeah, well, I can say right now, it's a lot of this is like either about to happen or close to happening, which I just realized that's the same thing I just said. But yeah, we're trying to acquire, because look, I mean, I sell gardening products, but there's a lot of things in the gardening world that you can sell that I don't sell. And if I have a lot of educational material on growing plants, I should probably sell some plants. And I should probably sell really high quality ones. And so we're in the process of hopefully acquiring a company that can allow us to do that. That's like a really sort of legacy, reputable company that I'm really, really excited about. So yeah, that's like sort of the big play, is to start offering live goods and selling those as well.
That's awesome. And like, can you, this is a dumb question. Can you ship a plant?
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting e-com logistics problem to solve, because of course it's live goods. So that's hard on its own to ship if you had no restrictions whatsoever, but every state has different restrictions on the types of produce that you can and can't ship. Like California and Florida, almost impossible to get citrus into the state, almost impossible. So what you have to do if you want to sell to anywhere in the country is you then need to establish or work with a nursery who produces in state and then only route those orders. So like you get this crazy sort of matrix of shipping problems that if you solve it, there's a lot of value there. But yeah, you can ship plants.
That sounds like a great thing to buy rather than build.
Yeah. If you build that thing, dude, good luck. What you start to realize, I guess, is as you grow a company, and tell me what you think about this, is honestly, the solution to a lot of problems are just to go hire the people who've already solved them or buy the company that's already solved them. And there's very few things, unless you're pushing like, crazy hard tech edges or something, that aren't already solved somewhere. And especially for like my style business is not, we're not groundbreaking. We're just, the formulation of it is interesting. We're not pushing the envelope though.
You're groundbreaking all the time. How else are you going to plant those seeds? Man.
That's true, baby. Yeah, we're physically breaking ground, which some may say is higher value.
I knew there was going to be gardening puns in here. I just
it's too
didn't
easy,
know
man.
when it was going to come.
It's too easy. Yeah.
Okay, so you're buying this nursery that has distribution all over the country. I imagine this is going to like radically expand the products that you have available.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of. I mean, I really don't know how much I can say of this, so maybe we can clear this afterwards. But it's really like a fish eating a larger fish type of situation where they're bigger than us.
Yeah.
And so it's a really unique scenario where we get to sort of steward a company into the next generation of growers, and sort of really continue the legacy, because it's a very old company. So yeah, it over doubles revenue in a perfect world, if not more. So yeah, the synergy of it is crazy, because it's the same logic as before. Like, hey, I'm a creator, I'll offer products. And now it's like, hey, I'm a creator, I'll offer an instantly saleable and like well-running suite of products that is already respected, so I think it's crazy.
Yeah, that's super incredible. I have another dumb question for you.
Yeah.
How does like IP, for lack of a better term, like work in the agricultural world? Like, can anybody grow anything at any time?
Actually, no. So there's certain things that, let's say you have a patent on a great example. So there's a company, I think it's Del Monte, that does the pineapples. They're a big pineapple company. And so they grow in Costa Rica, normal golden pineapples, but they also produced a pink pineapple that's taken them about 12 years to produce. And so it's a GMO pineapple, which a lot of people don't like GMO. This is a situation where the enzyme that turns, so all pineapples start out pink on the interior. What they've done is they've muted the enzyme that turns it orange after it sweetens up. Whoa. And so they've just decreased the ability for it to turn orange. It's the only modification they've made, but it's a true genetic modification that they have now patented that variety. And so what they do, it's really interesting in their marketing, because in the plant world, you kind of don't want to call that out as in a marketing sense, because it's just not a good look, I guess. And so what they'll say is they're like, we've lovingly grown these pineapples in the beautiful fields of Costa Rica, and for sustainability purposes, we slice off the tops of the pineapples so that we can replant them and continue this cycle of life. Well, that's not why. It's because if you give me the top of a pink pineapple, I can grow a pink pineapple.
Oh,
I can propagate it and I can grow it, and it's actually illegal for me to do that. And so they're just preventing you from doing it, because as soon as they allow that out of Costa Rica, basically, and a market develops for it, it would take a few years, because pineapples are a 2 to 3 year crop, but you could propagate enough to have this illicit black market of pink pineapples that you then undercut Del Monte for. So yeah, there's certain situations where you literally, it's illegal to propagate plants that you could buy at a nursery. Whoa. Not to say people don't do it. I'm sure people do it all the time, but yeah, I mean, if you started to like run an underground nursery, you could get hit pretty hard for that.
That would be the cutest black market business of all time. I'm a pirate of pink pineapples.
Yeah. and you've like, because I mean, pineapples, dude, are really long growers. Like, we're talking 3 years.
That's crazy.
So for one fruit. And so, yeah, you imagine like some guy like goes to Costa Rica, grabs like 20 tops, grows them for 3 years, grows like 40 more tops. It's like 10 years down the line, he has like 700 only, and he's trying to sell them. He's trying to like undercut. It doesesn't make any sense, but
and goes to jail after making like $42.
Yeah. He gets sued for like $250,000 or something like that. Yeah. All that to say, yeah, there's certain types of plant material you can patent, and thus then you can infringe on that IP.
That's wild.
Seed breeding actually is another one that's really fascinating. If you're hybridizing seeds, which is not GMO, that's traditional crossing methods. Yep. But like I've met some people who've grown new tomato varieties, new potato. I met a guy who took 23 years to get a new potato that you could actually grow from a seed. Wow. Because most potatoes, you plant the actual potato.
Yeah.
So this is one where you can grow from a seed, and it grows what's called true to type, which means it's pretty close to the potato that it was the parent of. Potatoes, typically you can't do that because you get just whatever. There's too much crossing. So he's grown that, and like, yeah, if you steal that seed, you're in big trouble. It kind of gets into that whole idea of like Monsanto with the GMO soy, and it blows into your field, and then you get sued, Yeah.
Have you read The Fish That Ate the Whale?
No, I should probably read that.
I mean, it is like relevant to you on multiple fronts, I think, at this point. it's the story of like the Banana King, Sam Zamuri, who like lived in New Orleans.
I'm interested. Yeah.
It's absolutely wild. It reads like a total novel. Like it seems impossible. He like owned large swaths of Central America and like pioneered the marketing of the banana in the United States. And it talks about the different like growth types of banana and all the like geopolitical conflicts about like between Central America and importing bananas. And like, yeah,
for sure I'm buying that. Yeah.
Highly recommend.
I have a confession actually to make, and it's pretty bad to make to someone like yourself because you're such a reader. I think when we first talked, I was reading a lot. Like I was reading as much as you or anyone else in that sort of world of knowledge accumulation and codification, you know. Since I started Epic, especially in the last couple of years, I don't know if I've read a book cover to cover at all. And I don't know how I feel about that. I just haven't done it, dude. I don't know what to tell you.
I will say like the opportunity cost of reading a book cover to cover is like goes up constantly.
It does, right? And I get more towards that Naval style of like, when do if I need the knowledge right now, I'll go hunt it down. And then as soon as I get it, I'll just go act on it. And I guess I'll miss out on like the breadth of knowledge I could develop, you know?
Yeah. Like I'm getting way choosier about what books I actually read cover to cover. And it's a lot less than, I mean, I used to read 50 books a year and now it's like less than 10 probably, but I do a lot more podcasts, a lot more, papers, especially like trying to learn about Web3. Like, I don't know, there's only two good books about it, maybe.
Books are the worst way to learn about that, I feel like.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Twitter is probably the best way. Twitter and Discord is the best way to learn about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chatting with some person. Yeah.
So, but yeah, audiobook, whatever. Audiobook, the Fish That Ate the Whale. Like,
I will. Yeah.
You'd be into that.
Okay.
What I don't know. You're into the YouTube thing too, right? Like, or the the Web3.
Thing, yeah. I mean, so I've been in crypto since. I mean, really, I'm kind of an OG in a sense, where someone sent me 0.06 Bitcoin in 2013, and also I was trying to mine it in 2013. I just could not figure it out. I was trying to mine Bitcoin and Litecoin in 2013, just couldn't get it, which I still regret to this day, of course. But yeah, I, in a serious way since 2017. And then obviously in the last like maybe 18 months, a lot more, because it feels like something tastes different this time.
Yeah.
And seeing where Epic is now as like a Web2 giant, I'm like, okay, well, what's going to happen? Right. Where's it going?
Yeah. Is there any like entrance of that, like what you're learning there to like the day job, I guess, of running Epic? Like,
yeah. So I've got a couple ideas. I'm curious what you think of these, because they're certainly not fleshed out. But I have this idea of, got really into the NFT thing. And as soon as I used to just garbage NFTs, I was like, what's the point? You can right click save. It was the whole thing. Yep. I was like, yeah, who cares? Like, I don't care if I have the Mona Lisa, picture's fine. It doesn't matter. As soon as I bought one, I understood it, like almost like physiologically. Yep. I was like, oh, I actually understand completely what's happening. So that was a weird experience. And as soon as I did that, then my mind goes, I think the profile picture JPEGs are like probably the dumbest reason to have NFTs as a technology, you know? That's my take. Obviously it's fantastic to see all these artists making a bunch of money and succeeding, which is really cool, because typically they just get owned by economics. But I started thinking, I was like, okay, well, what if you could somehow, the people who are really into epic gardening as a community, which I have a Discord of like 8,000 people, right? And so I was like, well, what if you could
epic gardening Discord?
I started a Discord in I think earlier this year. Because I was like, it was another one of those things where I'm like, if I'm trying to reach every demographic, some people just want to hang in a chat room all the time and talk about plants. So is it the most pop in Discord ever? No, but we got like a core community of people.
That's awesome.
So I started thinking, I was like, okay, well, my first thought was, what if you could use something like Republic and sell 10% of your company to your community, right? I was like, well, that's cool. There's a lot of legal structures there. Investors probably aren't too keen on things like that. Like maybe you separate it. And so I was like, okay, well, what if I could tokenize the epic gardening community? The idea I had was, if I have, let's say, 100 by 100 square foot plot of land, you divide it into single square foot blocks, you tokenize the blocks, and then you allow people to purchase the tokens, and that represents the square footage of space in the garden that they would have like a DAO level governance over. And you could create collectives and groups and stuff. and I was going to call it community garden. And the idea is the community is literally directing what's happening in that space based on all of the tokenomics and the governance. And so it's the closest I could come up with to a way to make the people who really follow Epic Gardening connect with it a true part of it all. And maybe the produce gets sent to them, right? Their fractional share. Maybe it gets donated. Maybe there's another formulation that makes sense. But there has to be a way in the future, I think, where all these Web2 style creators, YouTubers, podcasters, whatever, give their community some level of upside potential in the growth of the whole thing. I just don't know what it looks like right now because it's so early.
Yeah, it definitely early. I think the stuff that you can imagine happening around these communities is like really epic. But I don't think that the infrastructure exists quite yet.
No.
There are like glimpses of it, right? So there's one Discord I'm in, the Shiny Objects Club.
Yeah, we're both in it.
Oh yeah, that's right. I mean, like the like level, there's automatic like level ups in that depending on how much time you spend typing into that Discord. I think that's like the metric, or maybe it's like
I believe it's
read and write time or something, some combination of it.
It's something like that, yeah. And they just released a token for the community, and so now I believe the way they're doing it, I'm not sure. I need to go look at it, but you can redeem the points you earn in Discord for some sort of amount of Shiny. Maybe, I'm not sure, or you can just swap Shiny out for whatever crypto that you have.
Yeah.
And some people have done that.
Yeah. I imagine the future version of Epic Gardening that's like people earn points, tokens, whatever, for helping newbies like find new content or helping create it or sharing it, or
could be.
And those translate roughly back into, I don't know, like I see like Reddit turning their karma points into like tokenized, which means you could tie it to value really easily.
Let's just say let's just say if they do that, I'm be happy, because I used to be a crazy Redditor, so I've got some karma. So if that karma has any sort of value to it that you can swap out, then that would be very interesting. Just like with what just happened with the Ethereum name service airdrop.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you get any of that or no?
I haven't redeemed it yet, but I realize that I'm an idiot, because the higher it goes, basically the higher your tax bill on the realized gains of the tokens.
Oh, interesting.
I think I'm not, it's not clear to me how this all works, but
that does make sense, I guess, because that would be the event, right?
I think that's the event.
I redeemed at 26, I guess. Well, actually, no, I redeemed before there was even a listing. So how does that work? Who knows? Dude, that's the thing. The tax rules have to change because there's no way to square them with current reality. If Web3 takes off, it's like, yeah, these are not all investments. It doesn't make sense. You can't track it that way.
Yeah. On the other hand, it's easier to track than it's ever been. Like, drop in your addresses and it like spits it all out. So the lift isn't crazy, but yeah, it's definitely, it should not be a taxable event to like identify yourself on a website and sign into something. Like,
yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Crazy.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So I've thought about that as far as like creators and Web3 integrations. I've thought about things like it might Web3 technology offline even might solve like distribution problems. So if you think about like food production, you think 60s onwards, you have like synthetic fertilizer monocropped production, and you have centralized production, centralized distribution. And I was like, okay, well, we're now seeing a movement where we see all these urban farmers doing like, I don't know, 5-10 mile radius local farm production level, right? The problem with that is even if you get everyone to do that, you have a distribution problem yet again, because now everyone's growing copies of the same produce and has to go somewhere, right? So it's more locally sustainable, but also then you run into that problem. So I was like, well, what if you could represent all the economics and the actors of this ecosystem on the blockchain and create the correct incentives to make the optimal action of distribution and production happen just based on the economics of it all? I think you can make a real dent in food production, because you could just say, okay, well, what has the most food miles that is the stupidest to grow and transport? Like lettuce, for example, high value, high decomposability. So in theory, it should be grown locally only. It's very easy to grow. It's like you could create a system in which it's almost like an Airbnb, but for lawns, where most of us don't use most of our outdoor space productively.
Yep.
Kind of like when we're not driving our car, Uber, when we're not in our house, Airbnb. I'm like, well, what if you did that for lawns or outdoor space? And you could even create a new class of worker that would be the local gardener, right? Just like the Uber driver. I'm like, that could some version of that could work. But I have
fucking
no clue
love that. Do lawns drive you crazy?
Especially here in San Diego. Yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, like, wait, where are you at?
Kansas City.
It's way more rainy there, right? Like,
it is, but they're still stupid.
It's so dumb in an area like San Diego, where like most of San Diego gets their water from the Colorado River. It's like, okay, well, you're pulling water from another state to put on a non-native monocultured, non-productive grass so that you can look at it. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Yeah. So we'll look back on that, I think, pretty negatively, especially when you can just do like a lower water use thing that still looks good, you know?
Or that's productive and useful.
So
is there, I know one of your like core principles or missions is like help people grow their own food.
Yeah.
Is there any, I don't want to put you on the spot, but like, is there math behind the like gardening can save the world? Like to what extent can we actually be like all growing our own food? Because it's definitely not zero, but like I have had a hard time. I don't know. I'm not a particularly great gardener because I have not watched nearly enough of your YouTube channel, but I do like believe that there's a lot there. And it could close a huge gap, like you're talking about, like reducing food miles and cost, and like just how much of an impact would that be if we were all really diligent about like using our space and in a time efficient way.
I've thought about this because if you look at like World War II, or I believe it was World War I, but there was this concept of the Victory Garden, which was great branding.
Oh yeah.
So there was a point at which the Americans were growing roughly 40% of their own produce at home, just as a global stat, is somewhere around there. At that level, that's real impact, right? So I don't know. There's a catalyst there that you can't manufacture. You need an us versus them nationalistic event for that to even work. So I don't really know how it would work. My focus right now has been like, I'm not going to make people who never want to garden convince them. I'm going to make someone who has a taste go a little harder. And then what's nice about gardening, both in products and also just in the actual act of it is a public facing interface in your house. And so you are in your yard. So you kind of think of it, especially when COVID came out, I was like, dude, this is actually kind of like a disease. If you think about how to market the art of gardening and also products, because it's a public facing thing in your yard. If you have people in your yard, there is sort of an R naught of how many people get interested in and sort of infected with the idea and then do it and then they spread it. And so I was like, I guess all I'm really trying to do is get the hardcore super spreaders to super spread what we talk about and maybe even the products that we sell, and then just kind of let it play from there and hope that we're in a position where if there is some big catalyst, we've now armed everyone with the knowledge to go like source the education, you know? Like what if we have some weird, crazy food crisis? And it just so happens that for 7 years, Epic Gardening has put out a library of how to grow food at home productively. Well, then we're here for you, you know? I don't know that I can force that event to happen though.
I don't think you should if you could, because that would make you a Bond villain.
Yeah, that would make me very evil. Yeah. Yeah, it's like in service of doing the greater good, you do the evil thing. Yeah, there's no way, right?
I really wanted my YouTube channel to grow, so I created another like.
So I poisoned the water supply.
Horrific pandemic that interrupted the supply chain.
Yeah, The pandemic was interesting though, dude, because obviously anything that benefited from being an at-home hobby just exploded. You know, so like my woodworking creator friend, my baking creator friend, like you were looking at 10x growth, fantastic. But it lasted long enough, at least for gardening, that it was 2 springs. So one spring would have been like flash in the pan. Okay, I'm back to work. And that was a fun little chapter. I baked some sourdough bread, you know, but 2 springs is enough where like, oh, this is actually fun. And I'm seeing myself get better the next year. And so maybe I'll just do this. And then I think you saw culturally, because I'm on TikTok and stuff, you see with the youth, like cottage core is a movement that's coming out.
Yeah.
Hermit core. Like there's all these weird ass movements. And I'm like, dude, the youth are aspiring to this more than they're aspiring to be, you know, the next Zuck, which I think is probably positive for society.
Yeah. So it's funny you say sourdough. I remember having this moment where like it was mid-pandemic. Nobody's going outside. We're all like Lysoling our groceries. And
Yeah.
like, if you remember that month or whatever. And I was like, made the loaf of sourdough bread that was definitely mediocre. And I was like 12 hours into like dough folding and starter feeding and just throwing out flour. And I was like, this, like, the expected value of this loaf of bread based on the inputs is like $150 at least. And sourdough bread I can buy much better for like $4, $5, $6 at the store. Yeah. So like, I understand and appreciate the miracle of capitalism.
Oh yeah.
But like, is that, do people have that same thing in gardening of like, oh my God, I worked hard for this one tomato? Or is it kind of it's so passive that you're like, oh, this is like super productive use of time and money because I spent, $20 on seeds and water.
It is both. I think, like, to me, I feel like the definition of a hobby is something that's more expensive because you're doing it yourself, so yeah, for a lot of people, it really depends on your approach. Like, my gardening assistant built a front and backyard garden that they mostly eat from for like under $1,000. And that economically is of course worth it, just looking at grocery prices, but also he had nothing else to do during the pandemic and he's put in tons and tons of sweat equity. So relative to what else he could have been doing, let's say he had some big high paying job, obviously the opportunity cost is bad. I kind of think if you view it strictly as a one-off economic analysis, it's obviously not worth it until you hit a certain level of scale, or you like hyper optimize what you grow. You only grow the most expensive, easiest to grow matrix of things. But if you think about the like
the value gardener,
the value, you go like the straight economic gardener. Yeah. Like in that case, you would grow herbs like basil and rosemary and stuff, and you'd grow leafy greens. And that's probably it. Because that's what farmers do. I mean, urban farmers will do that and they'll sell that to restaurants. It's the only thing that makes sense. You wouldn't grow potatoes and onions, for example, right? It's just so cheap. But if you think about what we were talking about earlier, like you're out in the sun, maybe you don't get enough sun, and that gives you 20, 30 minutes a day that you need. Yeah. You're talking to your neighbors. There's this community tie. Like the intangibles and the second and third orders are way better than the economic price you might be paying, I think.
Yeah. Nowhere else to get those dirt enzymes and make your brain happy. Happy brain juice is what it's all about.
Can you imagine? Imagine like a Tim Ferriss-esque optimizer personality who like only cares about the enzymes, and it's just like, okay, I need 5 minutes of digging into soil, but I'm actually not doing anything. Just like playing around with it just to get it. I could see someone doing that. It's like, what it could do, just have a.
I actually have I think there's something really interesting about like, if there's like a sci-fi outline I have, like if we perfectly understood the feedback loops of like the quantified self and all of the different activities that we had, we would actually probably only do these really, really wholesome things like sunbathing and walking outside and playing with puppies. And like that is actually neurochemically what makes us really, really happy. And and the subjectivity of your own neurochemical happiness, like we just don't have a way to like appreciate that. Like we are all just so mimetically driven that there's nothing stronger than like that feedback loop. But if we had the technology to do it, we would have this sort of like return to wholesomeness that might be like kind of amazing. I have it's just a fun storyline.
That's hitting exactly on this. That's another interesting way, I think, to encapsulate this idea I have of like, I guess it's like a kind of a contrarian take, I suppose, but it's like, I actually think most of what we develop technologically doesn't materially improve our lives in the same way as like walking in a forest, with a good friend and then eating wholesome food and then like laughing by a fire would do for us. And so I think I call it like high tech natural. I think you should barbell mostly probably on the more primal side. And then you should taste 20% of what the best of society and tech has to offer that truly like the fact that we can do this, insane. Don't want to give it up ever. Yep. But after this, I probably should like shirtless walk outside and like, harvest some basil and have like some homegrown eggs. Right. Yeah. Because it seems to me like we can't get past our biology fast enough, evolutionarily speaking. And it's at least for the next however long until we go metaverse. It's just going to be the best way to do it. Like I said, dude, I saw some I treated it as a meme, but I saw some scientists were like, we have discovered a new way without plants to take carbohydrates and turn them into starches. And it was this like crazy chemical like circle of transformation, that they did. And then I retweeted and I was like, or you could just throw a potato in the ground and forget, and you have it. That's what that plant is doing for you. And so it's like, do we really need to do that? And then I'm like, am I a Luddite or am I not? I don't know, because I really like tech, but it's a weird dichotomy, I think.
Yeah, if anything, we over apply it, I think, for sure. And the like barbell triage is super interesting. I mean, the slippery slope is like, we don't use tech to work less hard, we use it to work more for longer. Like, but yeah, so I think you're onto it.
It kind of ties to the like when to stop playing the game idea. It's like, okay, well, if you're using tech to hyper leverage yourself, which we're both fans of course, you do have to decide like when is enough, like, or because we all can't leverage ourselves until the end of time. We all can't be the biggest player in everything we do. It just doesn't mathematically work that way, and so it is interesting. Like, okay, when do I just decide to chill and be a human being?
Yeah. Well, I think now is about the time for me to go chill and be a human being. Like, we've been at this for a minute. I'm super like jazzed for you, man. This is all really, really cool. What a great adventure. And I'm glad you're getting a little breathing room to like live the way you want to live. And but still, I think like you're getting the best of both worlds. Still take this huge level up and like build this gardening behemoth.
If it certainly feels like that, I hope it's true. But yeah, man, I appreciate it. I'm glad we got to catch up, and maybe I'll have to have you on sometime because I want to hear about everything you've been up to as well. It's been a while.
Yeah, we'll do it. I don't know. What's your podcast? I don't know anything about gardening. You see my sad basil plant. I'm not qualified to be on your podcast.
No. I think just maybe we could not record it and just have a phone call, Long gasp, the content creator's nightmare to not record it.
The unleveraged good times.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, dude. We'll catch up soon. Thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate this. Everybody go grow your own lettuce.
Yeah, hit us up on YouTube. We got some good beginner videos for you.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right, take care, man.